Okay, now that Lee has a skybox set up and we've got some materials in place with textures on them, the only thing we're really missing to bring our environment to life is lights. With no light at the moment, you can see in the game panel, bottom left corner where Lee's got the mouse at the moment, everything's flat and, well, pretty dark. Maybe you want dark, but if you want dark, you still want some sort of shadowing and some sort of overall ambience, because lights, they play a very important role in selling your scene to the player of your game. They set the mood, they can be used for effects. As Zach has once said, they define the very essence of the environment in which you are in. So in this video, what we're going to do is spend just a couple of minutes and talk about what kind of lights are available to you. Then we're going to talk for just a second about rendering paths and the 3 different rendering paths available. And then Lee's going to spend all of, I don't know, 1 minute setting up a single light, because our environment is an outdoor setting, so it just needs to be illuminated with a directional light. That's it. Something that gives us the feeling of being outside, where our light will basically be coming down from wherever the sun seems to be in parallel rays. So that's the plan. So starting out, well, let me back up just a second and add this. We're not going to go into a lot of depth, because the idea of this series is just quickly getting a simple level up to speed, something that you've created from over inside another 3D package. In this case here, we used Maya. We are planning an advanced lighting series in the near future, because there's all sorts of things that we can get into with lighting. Unity provides just a wealth of parameters, and Beast as well, which is something we'll also be talking about starting in the next video when we get into light maps. So let's start out by talking about what lights are available to us without even getting into render paths. Lee, what lights are available to us in Unity?
Well, most people would say there are 3 lights. The reason they say that is if you go to Create Other, we have our 3 lights.
Now, when you say most people would say there's 3 lights, are there other people that would say there's 4 lights?
There's actually a 4th light.
Ooh. Well, let's talk about the 3 that are going to be prevalent right there in our creation panel.
The first one from the creation panel, we've got a point light. A point light is kind of like a flame on a candle or a light bulb.
Okay.
It's actually a light that starts at a source and radiates in all directions evenly from that central point. So that's what a point light is. Now, a spotlight is an easy way to think of it is a flashlight.
Okay.
It actually starts at a source and it radiates outwards in a cone.
Okay.
So it actually will cast a circle of light defined by
the source, but and the size of your cone, etc.
Your radius of your
So basically, like a flashlight or a headlight on a car, or, for instance, spotlights in a theater.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they're very good at illuminating small areas and bringing emphasis to them.
Okay.
Now, our 3rd type of light is called a directional light. Now, a directional light starts at well, actually, it doesn't really start. It fills everything.
Okay.
And it is generally light rays in a certain direction defined by your light.
So that's really the key thing here is that we have parallel rays of light that are going, I guess you could say, infinitely, if you want to look at it like that, from a plane that is angled some orientation, and the rays you could see as coming simply from infinity far away in that angle, that orientation.
Correct. And they fill the entire scene. There's no way to throttle it back and have it illuminate only one part of the scene.
So the idea is, with these types of lights, or this type of light here, is to mimic something like the sun, a large light source that's very, very far away.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, like I said, those were 3 lights. There's actually one other one. To find it, it's under Edit, Render Settings. It is actually the ambient light.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the ambient light is fairly simple. It's just a color. So you can select your color, and it lights all the meshes in your scene evenly to whatever you select your color to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very simple, but it's also a very flat.
Yeah, but it's ambient. It's filling everything.
Everything evenly.
That's
it
right.
does not emphasize any of the contour of any of your shapes that are in the scene.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of useful particularly in the days before we got beast and light mapping, we didn't have indirect light, we didn't have global illumination. This allowed us to kind of trick having the effect of a skylight. So I could actually come in and pick a color of the sky, and I could kind of tweak it out a little bit so it looked like the sky would actually be filling in some of the area.
The idea would be to make sure that there was no area in your level that a player could see that was completely black.
Exactly. I can go in here and I can crank all the ambient and make it go completely away. Now we don't have any lights in our scene.
No, we don't.
And it's gone from boring to really boring. Unless we were making a silhouette game, but
This is true.
so what I'm going to do is I'm going to boost up our ambient just enough so we can see what's going on here.
So as far as lights that we can create and manipulate inside of Unity, we have 3.
Correct.
And then we have this 4th one that we need to be aware of that we can go in and manipulate the overall color of.
If you need to.
If you need to.
And with light mapping in Beast, one of the things that I'll recommend right now, I'm going to leave it with some color in the ambient light just so we can see what's going on. One of the things that we can do is once we've done the shadow or the light maps and we've got them all baked out and we're happy with it, is to come back here and turn off all the ambient light so we're not getting any influence from it whatsoever.
Okay.
So it's just something to be aware of.
So now that we're aware of the 3 types of lights that we can physically place anywhere we'd like in our scene, let's spend just a second and talk about rendering paths. This is very important because you kind of need to know what your target is. What hardware do you plan your game to be running on? That's very important in deciding the render path that you're going to use. Also, it's worth noting that you need to have Unity Pro if you're going to use the exciting new rendering path deferred lighting, which is now available with Unity 3.0, but you have to have the Pro version. But I say that you need to know what you're targeting hardware-wise for the simple fact that with deferred lighting, well, let me say this first. We have 3 different rendering paths.
That is correct.
Okay, we've got deferred lighting, and that is the new rendering path available in Unity 3 Pro. We've got forward rendering, which is the one that's been available, for some time. And then we've got vertex lit. So those are the 3 that we've got. And we're going to be, of course, working a lot with deferred lighting. That rendering path provides us with the most flexibility for our lighting and shadow. It's very, very powerful. But a second ago, and I said you need to be aware of the hardware that you're targeting your application for, that you're putting together inside of Unity. It's important because with deferred lighting, you have to have shader model 3.0 or above. That's got to be available. So you can't expect to make a game and hand it to your grandmother who has an older Pentium computer with an ancient video card in it, and expect the deferred lighting to work and for it to look like it does on your computer. It's not going to happen.
And for that matter, even your brand new shiny iPhone can't run it.
Precisely, because basically no mobile device, so Android nor iPhone, supports deferred lighting. Now, for those of you that are using Unity for 360 development, that's Xbox 360, and the PS3, if you have a license for Unity for those 2, then you'll be happy to know that deferred lighting is supported. So you do have that ability on those. But sorry, you don't have the beautiful lighting and shadows available over on the iPhone or the Android. Now, let's see. Anything else we want to say about deferred lighting, just, right out the gate?
Well, probably there are, as wonderful as it is, there are a couple of limitations with it.
That's for sure.
So if you look at it, with all the things that you get with deferred lighting, you will suffer the fact that it does not support semi-transparent objects.
That's a biggie. And the other one is anti-aliasing.
Correct. So
it doesn't support anti-aliasing. So you lose those 2 things right there.
Right. The nice thing, though, with the semi-transparent, it does fall back to forward rendering for those objects.
Very cool.
So you will still be able to have transparent objects, but you don't get all the features that you would with deferred lighting with those.
That's right. Now, forward lighting So or forward rendering, excuse me. Let's talk about that rendering path for a second. That is, I mean, it's still a shader-based rendering path, but its availability, it will require shader model 2.0 and above. So now we've kind of broadened our spectrum of hardware in the PC realm that we can run forward rendering on. Also, the 360 and PS3 both will utilize forward rendering as well. And OpenGL ES 2.0. So with some of the newer mobile devices, such as the iPhone 4, will have the ability to take advantage of forward rendering.
Correct.
And then let's step down to Vertex Lit.
That's kind of the catch-all.
Yeah, but what will it run on as far as PCs go? Well, anything. As far as mobile devices, also a good piece of news, it runs on OpenGL ES 1.1 and above, so that's very cool. So now that's opened us up to a lot more mobile devices. And it's interesting to note, no support, or it does not function on the Xbox 360 or the PS3. So let's throw that one out there. So no consoles. So that's our rendering paths. And we've taken a look at the lights. Again, we're not going to dive deep into all the parameters, but I did want our viewers out there to be aware of what is available. Though we will give you, with this series, a quick look at where we need to go to change our rendering path. And then we will take a look, because we're going to obviously get into discussing light maps, because that's one of the exciting new things with Unity. So we will be talking a lot about parameters with the light and light mapping system when we get over to the next few videos after this one here. So we're not just going to skimp out on everything. You're still going to get a dose of quite a few of the parameters. I just wanted to say that real quick. But Lee, you've got a skybox. You've got a dark world. We need some light.
Yeah, I think so. What
Let's
about
do it.
sun? Sun sound good?
Sun sounds good.
All right.
It looks like the light that would make the most sense in the scene you've got.
I'm guessing a directional light.
Yeah, for a sun.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't thinking a spotlight.
Well, you never know. So, but no, absolutely. For a sun, a moon, anything that's a very large light source that's going to be a long distance away.
Rotate that guy in Y so that he's pointing back at the wall behind.
Oh, the actual light itself?
Yeah, the light itself. So he's pointing the opposite way. Watch as Lee is turning the light. There you go. Keep turning, keep turning. And you can see, there we go. Now, take a look at this. Look at the cube that is back over here as I reach across Lee. Notice how it still has illumination provided on this. I just wanted to point out that position is not important with our directional light. Orientation is everything.
No, actually, I can take this light and I can move it all the way over.
Even
here.
that's great. Just back and forth. You don't see no effect.
No changes. I can move it back and forth in the scene.
No changes.
I can move it up and down.
Still no changes. Now rotate.
Rotate is the one thing that I can do that most definitely affects that light.
So picture it as an infinitely large plane for so far away that's emitting light in a direction. Direction determined by the orientation of this light.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to position it so it makes sense, and then rotate it so it lights in a direction that would look like it was the sun.
So you're basically saying we don't want to have this thing angled so it's pointing towards our sun.
No, since how our sun's over here, it would yield some very weird looking things if, you know, the light was going into our sun.
Yeah, that would be a bit bizarre.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition the light. We've already discussed that that doesn't make any difference. I'm going to put it out of the way so it doesn't interfere with any other work that I do in the scene. But then also it kind of makes sense where it's located in the scene as if it were the sun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it out here outside of our level. I've actually just gone into an orthographic view top down and positioned it roughly in the direction where our sun would be coming from. Switch back into perspective and try to rotate the camera. Matter of fact, I'll select the camera and hit F. I'm going to get it to zoom in to the camera. And I'm going to position the viewport in a position that I'm looking directly into what would be our sun on the sky box. Then I'm going to select our sun. Matter of fact, I'm going to rename the directional light to be sun. So I just hit F2 to rename and then just type in sun. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to position our directional light in the center, and then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to rotate our sun so the rays are coming from the sun and pointing pretty much directly at the center of the screen, or where I'm looking at. That will give us a good approximation. I can say that word, I think.
Approximation.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
There we go. What he said. But basically all we're doing is we're positioning the sun in a place out of the way, but then setting its rotation so the direction of the rays look like they are actually coming from the sun. So when we move around, our scene is lit as if it were really lit by a sun.
Right. Now the key thing here to keep in mind is he said he moved it to get it out of the way, so out of the working area in this level, so he doesn't accidentally select it if he's selecting other things. But again, the position's not important. It's the orientation. So he moved it out of the way as a convenience factor to him.
Correct. Now, the rotation of the light is only part of it. To really get into or get the feel from the light, we have to adjust a couple more things.
Okay.
Because we're talking about, lights are all about setting the mood of your scene. So right now, a bright white light doesn't really look like a sunset.
No.
So what we're going to do is, with the sun selected, in the inspector, I have my color picker. I'm actually going to pick the color picker, and I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to pick a color from the sky near the sun, not actually in the center, but off to the side, so I get a nice yellowish hue. So already we can start to see the color coming in. And for a sunset, this might be just a tad too bright.
So the intensity parameter allows us to...
Right. If I go way up, I can completely blow it out.
Some nuclear testing going on.
Right. But I can also dial it into a little bit further back to get something a little bit more that I would expect from a late evening sun. So with that,
we've got some lighting in the scene, but we still have some weird things taking place. We're missing depth. We do see, the hint of shading, if you will. Right. Not really, but we're missing shadows. That's the big thing to really bring this to life. But I mean, you can point out what's happening with the materials now, because I did see some.
There was actually another place I wanted to go with it.
Oh,
I wanted to actually revisit the default light a little bit.
Oh, let's do it.
The ambient. See, where I was talking about where we can come into render settings and we can adjust our ambient light color. Now, in this scene, we've got our yellowish color coming in from the sun. I can actually go ahead and pick up, say, a sky color. And I can back that down. So I can add just a hint of blue back in. And with the sun, maybe even a little bit more yellow into it. Maybe not. There we go.
That's quite a bit of yellow.
Yeah, a little bit too much. So actually, I'm going to bring it down and bump up the intensity just a bit. Actually, I might even go a little bit more red.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Not quite so much. But this is all trial and error.
It's not trial and error. It's just tweaking.
Lots and lots of tweaking.
Tweaking until you get the result you're looking for. Is somebody being picky?
Yeah, just a bit. Too much.
I'm
all right, I'll stop.
I think they get the point.
It's like, come on, I'm not getting the colors I want. All right, so, but a little bit. So there's a little bit of blue being contributed by the ambient. We've got some yellow reddish coming in from, or a little bit light yellow pink.
And now that we have
the sun.
And I was just going to throw in, now that we have a light in the scene, you can see our materials coming to life as far as the glossiness or the sheen is concerned, as far as our bump mapping is concerned, giving us a really good feel of, these little gouges, if you will, between all the tiles.
But it can also point out all the stuff that is broke that we have to address now.
This is true.
Because now that we've actually got a light and we can see how our bump map is acting, we can see that it's probably a bit excessive. So what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to jump into textures, go to our checker bump, and we'll dial back our bump just a little bit. And maybe a little bit more. Me being picky again. So it's not quite as heavy-handed as
yeah.
right. So we've got that dialed back. But it also points out another problem. If you look, we've got real nice, sharp textures up close to the camera. But the further back that we get, the softer everything gets. Now this is contributed by the quality settings that we actually have our scene set up to. So to address it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit, Project Settings, Quality, and where we have our editor quality, I'm going to change it from good to fantastic. And as you can see, everything cleans up. And it also pushes back the distance at which the texture mapping comes into play.
Now, I know you just flipped that over to fantastic. Let's go ahead and change it back to good so we can point something else out to him in a minute when we get some shadows into the scene.
Okay. So we'll leave it at good, and then we'll come back here, and we'll now address your shadows.
Okay.
So right now, by default, Unity starts with forward lighting. Now, with forward lighting, we're allowed to have real-time shadows. So if I select our sun.
Now, Unity Pro, right?
Unity Pro, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Real-time shadows is a Unity Pro only feature. So, and to access it, you select your sun, go back to Inspector under Shadow Type. We have 3 settings here. No shadows, hard shadows, and soft shadows. To start with, I'll select hard shadows. And what we get is some shadows now that have... No.
Yeah, you missed it.
Yep, I sure did. Oh, selection fail. Here we go. There.
You want me to do it for you?
Thanks. But as you can see, we've got a very hard edge to our shadow. And we've actually got some noise in it at the very end. So what we can do here is we actually want to try soft edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to our sun, and instead of hard shadows, I'm going to select soft shadows. And as you can see, it takes our edges and it softens them out a bit.
Now, I would assume that that comes at a cost.
Of course, anything that is going...
Anything that makes it look nicer
comes with a cost.
Is more computationally expensive.
Right. Basically what's happening is with hard shadows, it only has to calculate out the shadow once and apply it. With soft shadows, you're actually calculating the passes several times and blurring through them to achieve the softness in it. So when you have real-time shadows, your soft shadows are going to be more computationally expensive. Yes, that's it.
And if it's not it, we'll just pretend it is.
But they do look better. Now, one of the things also that you'll notice is we have a shadow strength. Now, our shadow strength dictates how dark these shadows appear. So I can actually take this slider and I can dial it back, and what we get is a soft shadow that isn't quite as dark. This is really good for balancing out the look of your shadows with the rest of your scene, particularly once you start getting into baking out your own light maps if you don't have the ability to use deferred lighting. Because when you have deferred lighting, the blending between the real-time lights and their shadows with the light mapping is very accurate and almost imperceptible to see the difference.
Right.
When you're using forward lighting and you have light maps baked, what you end up with is very dark real-time shadows, while the light maps have a softer look. So you have to use the strength to balance those two out.
That's right. But keep in mind also, just want to remind everyone that when using the forward rendering path, that one light can give us these real-time shadows, one directional light, that is. So just a quick reminder.
Correct. So if you had a spotlight or a direct light and you're using forward rendering, you cannot use real-time shadows with them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So now we've got some shadows here. Now, you want to point out the quality setting differences?
Yeah, you can. See if we can find a place to get some artifacts. And
I'll actually bump up the shadow strength a little bit, try to make it a little bit more apparent. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Edit. We're going to go back into our quality settings, and we're going to adjust the quality again. So we'll jump back up to Fantastic. Everything gets sharper, a little bit cleaner, including the shadows.
yeah, let me throw this out there real quick, and that is, if you start to see a series of artifacts with your shadowing, definitely come into here. If you're in the editor and you can spare the processing power, you're not running a scene that's causing everything to slow down. Bumping this up to Fantastic is a good idea if the artifacts are bothering you. It's funny because the other day we were playing with a similar scene and artifacts were just all over the place, and today it's actually being quite nice. But I just wanted to toss that out just in case you start seeing weird artifacts.
And part of it is we can also make it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, it's nice being able to jump between these different modes.
Right. And the other part that I want to show in tandem with your quality settings, you actually have the option inside of the quality settings themselves to fine-tune your shadows. So what you can do is part of the thing. Actually, I think I can replicate part of the problem that we had with shadows. What I'm doing is I'm
randomly touching buttons.
Yep. Now I'm actually messing around with how shadows are calculated inside the scene from the light. What happens is shadow distance determines how far out from the camera that your shadows are calculated out. The number of cascades, shadow cascades, is the number of levels of quality that the shadows go through from the closest to the camera to the farthest out. So what happens is the farther your shadow distance is, the more area those 4 cascades have to cover. So what you end up with is not necessarily the highest quality shadows up close that you could possibly have. So by dialing in this number, you can actually improve the look of the shadows substantially as you get closer.
Now we know that the scene was 100 meters across, so just
Correct.
a second ago when you typed in 100 or anything better, we're seeing perfect shadows all the way back.
Well, we're seeing shadows all the way back, but close to the camera, we've got our better quality maps. All the way at the back, we've got lower quality
as
maps.
they go through, in this case, the 4 cascades.
Right.
That's set.
And what happened here, when I typed in shadow distance of 20, the shadows no longer have enough of a distance to reach all the way to the back. So if you look at the back wall and these objects back here, which used to have shadows, they no longer have them.
And our box right there, so our 4 cascades are now taking place over a tighter distance, closer to us.
Correct. So as I mess with the number trying to find exactly where the cutoff is, we can now see the cutoff as it's fading out from shadows to no shadows. And actually, if I position the camera just about right.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I like your thinking there.
So we can see how everything fades off over some distance. So the farther out I go, the more shadows I get. So this box has shadows, but nothing else does. And if I keep increasing this number, more and more things get shadows. But if you look really, really closely, these are very nice looking shadows. But out here in the distance, we've got some really jagged looking shadows. But because they're so far away, in a real game where you're playing and there's a lot of action, you probably won't ever notice that.
Exactly.
But the settings here are basically tuning your shadows so you get the best looking shadows you can where it matters. But you don't want everything to have shadows because it's going to eat into your performance.
Absolutely.
So you want to find that sweet spot where that number is realistic to the distance that the camera and the player is actually going to be paying attention to, and that's noticeable. So
But don't panic thinking, oh, but my scene's got to have shadows in it because it's going to look really weird not having shadows on that back wall, and there should be shadows there. We're going to be talking about light mapping real soon, and that's where things are going to get very interesting, especially when we can start blending between the two. Anyways, okay, continue.
All right. So what do you want to show next?
I don't know. What were we going to continue with?
No, I think that's pretty much all we need for this video.
Yeah, it's not a complex lighting setup, but at the same time, we talked about the 3 different rendering paths that's available. We well, now you didn't show where to change the path.
Oh, we never did we?
No, we didn't.
All right. Well, to do that, let's go ahead and move our camera somewhere so we can notice the differences.
Well, first of all, why would you even want to change your path in this case? What are we working towards?
In this one?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not necessarily this video, but I mean, why do you want to change? I mean, are you going to leave forward rendering?
No, the reason why we're going to actually use deferred lighting in this particular scene is for the fact that we are using normal maps on our textures.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were to leave ourselves in forward rendering, and the moment we start using light maps, we lose normal maps. We lose our spec ability. So this nice little spec that we've got from coming in from the sun, in these normals, we lose all that the moment we start baking out lights. So that's why we would switch to a deferred. So, and at the end of it, I think I want to leave it in vertex just so we can show what happens.
Sure.
But I'm going to show you where we go to change our rendering path. So what we do is we go into Edit, Project Settings, Player, under Other Options, Rendering Path. And this is where we can choose our three rendering paths. We have vertex lit. As you can see, as I point to the screen, that it yields a very flat scene. It's not exactly accurate. Our normal maps aren't really working the way they should. You get the idea of what the scene is, but it just doesn't have any...
It's cheap, fast, easy, runs on everything. Almost.
And then we've got forward, which is what we have. It's a little bit better. We do have spec, and we do have normal map. And most people, well, why bother with deferred? Remember, all this goes away the moment we start using light maps on it.
Before you change this rendering path, I mean, people that are getting tired of listening to us, they can hit stop or fast forward. So let's go a little bit longer. Throw another light in the scene, and can we cast shadows from, say, a spotlight? That if you put a spotlight in the scene and you point it at one of the cubes, can we get shadows going in 2 different directions from a cube? One shadow being created because of the sunlight, our directional light, and the other one from this guy.
Well, the answer to that is no.
That's correct. We've talked about that.
So what I'm going to do is, here's our spotlight, and I'm going to switch over and I'm going to rotate it so we try to illuminate this box right here.
Now, I want to see some more shadows. Where do we see some shadows from the light striking that guy?
Well, hold on a sec. Let me...
Oh, you're so slowly.
Yeah. But I'm a perfectionist.
Oh, I see.
I just like to do it right.
Whatever you have to tell yourself.
All right, so I've overdriven the light a bit to put it on here. Now, you go, hey, there's no shadows. Of course not. I haven't selected the shadow type. Well, all right, let's go select shadow type. I saw shadows. No shadows.
Wait, but we get a warning box.
What's this? Oh, apparently only directional lights can have shadows.
Jeez, it seems like I heard that just earlier. I mean, we are, after all, in a forward rendering path type at the moment. So
okay. Well, I want soft shadow, so I guess I'm going to turn it to directional light.
Whoa!
Oh, hold on.
I see a new shadow. Where'd our other shadow go?
Yeah, what happened?
Aha. Only one directional light.
Well, that's kind of hard. It's like going, well, so we can only have one. Well, all right, so we'll turn this one back to a spot because we don't want to have multiple directional lights in the scene.
Right.
You can do it, and there are reasons that you used to do it in 2.6. But
faking some bounce and things like that.
Exactly.
But in this case, we like this dynamic feel that you've got going up in your perspective scene view up above. But we need some shadows.
Well, the only way we can do that is deferred.
Yeah, so this is going to cause us to switch over to deferred lighting.
Right. So now we're going to have to go back to projects, into player, and this is why we use deferred lighting. One of the reasons. There's lots and lots of reasons. But the moment I did, notice we still have our normal maps. We still have some spec right there. But we also have a second shadow.
All right.
And if you look closely, if I select the sun, I can still adjust my strengths on each of my
each of the different lights individually, which is very cool. Really tweak out the look of the environment.
Yep, exactly. And the nice thing with deferred lighting is it yields a nice performance boost, particularly if you have lots of spotlights and point lights in your scene. The trick with using them is to make sure that they only illuminate as much of the scene as they absolutely have to.
Right. Again, the moment we start making a scene look nicer, it comes at a cost. And in this particular, and when I say looking nicer, I'm talking about looking nicer the cheap and easy ways, by just throwing in a bunch of lights and flipping on shadows. We're not doing any extra work like creating light maps, etc. If it's easy, it's going to come at a cost. Nothing's free.
Right. If you wanted to light up an entire city at night with a bunch of lights and expect all of them to run in real time, all casting shadows, using deferred lighting, you're not going to be satisfied with the results.
Right. But if we have a character that runs through this, we're going to see two shadows as he passes through that area right there.
Yes, we will.
We're not dealing with a static shadow situation, lighting situation at the moment. We're going to get to that here coming up next. We're dealing with real-time lights, throwing out real-time shadows. Again, Unity Pro. Okay? So now that we've taken a quick look at the different rendering paths, I believe that's pretty much everything that we set out to do and discuss in this video. In the next video, we're going to begin discussing the wonderful world of Beast and light maps. So that's going to wrap this video up. Thanks a lot.